What we wanted to do with this program is get everyone in South Australia to understand what climate impacts mean for them and how they need to respond. The focus has been on engaging regional leaders throughout South Australia to empower them to understand what climate impacts will be in their region and to work with their communities. Regional leaders are trusted by their communities and they understand their communities, and they're the best people to represent the issues. So our program has been very much about identifying the leaders at the local scale and working with them within their regional context and their planning context. And local government's been particularly important in that. Climate change impacts everyone, and we're in this problem together. And what we wanted to do was create a mechanism where everyone shared the problem and was willing to work together to deal with it. And I think we've been very successful in that. There's been many positive outcomes as a result of this process. By working at a regional scale, we've allowed a diversity of approaches and unique and tailored approaches to suit each region. And really, that's the only way to tackle climate change. Let the local people who are affected by the issue make decisions that are relevant to them and manage their own trade-offs and not impose a system on them. And I think the incredible diversity we've seen has been a key component of the success of the program. We've had to overcome a great number of challenges, and we've been allowed to do that in an adaptive way. We've looked at each challenge, whether it's convincing a group they need to be involved, working through our leadership structures, or securing funding from different sources, and we've been allowed to be innovative in how we approach those problems. I think this is a really good example of how adaptive management works to deal with really complicated problems. Sure, we could have improved on processes, but at the end of the day, we've had to try and innovate and grow this program and tackle issues as they come along. And some things we could have done better, and some things were wildly successful, way beyond our expectations when we first started them. And I think the success of the regional approach and how quickly everyone's gotten on board is an example of something that's worked well and something that's worked in excess of our expectations. I think one of the most important lessons here is that you need to just get started. Get out with your communities, work out what their issues are, and find ways of helping them deal with the impacts of climate change. It's by creating that community base and getting the support at the local scale that you're able to convince other decision makers that this is something important and worthwhile, and that's how you begin to build the buy-in.
The starting point for the LGA really started off around in 2008, where the Local Government Association's Mutual Liability Scheme started to trial the process of climate change risk assessment for our 68 councils in South Australia. That process was about identifying the likely impacts of climate change on our council's business and provide them with some guidance on how they might respond to those likely impacts. Over the course of the project, we identified that climate change impacts really were more than individual councils, and they actually had impacts across regions. And so the logical next step was to integrate the work that we were doing with councils individually into a regional process and engage all of the key stakeholders within that region, including Regional Development Australia boards and Natural Resource Management boards. The outcome that we were seeking was effectively to help councils become more resilient to likely impacts of climate change. The leadership shown by the Local Government Association really was a catalyst for helping councils to come to terms with what climate science was telling us were likely going to be the impacts of climate change in South Australia, and then what does that mean for our business, and what does that mean for our regions, and what does that mean for our communities. So the Mutual Liability Scheme project, the risk assessment, was very much a leadership project, and that has just been a great foundation project for us to deliver further outcomes. For me, the best outcome to date has been the partnerships and the linkages and the networks that we've created in this state, which also extend nationally and to some degree internationally as well. The South Australia has now got a fantastic network of people that are inspired and have the capacity to respond. They are decision makers in their own fields and are able to network and liaise with relevant bodies to get the best available science and the best information they need to make appropriate decisions for their organisations or communities. A couple of the biggest challenges for the local government sector have been around interpreting the scientific information that's available and being able to integrate that into their operational strategic management planning processes. So that's been a challenge, and the Local Government Association is targeting some resources to help councils to be able to do that. Another one of the biggest challenges has been around that mandate from the community. Back around 2007, 2008, we had a community that was very much aware of climate change and saw very strong political leadership from a federal and state government. That has changed over recent years, and councils are now experiencing a change in the mandate from their community. However, the challenge of climate change is not going away, and in fact, some might say it's actually increasing. So those have been a couple of the biggest challenges.